who we went through who are within the 2 miles who are going to be aligned, have y'all chosen who you're being aligned, who's the point person? Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor,
You
they
go.
actually built this after my daughter and son-in-law who are adjacent to our property and actually a little bit closer than we are.
They want to be added as
To the 2 mile.
to the 2 mile. Is there going to be an objection to that?
Your Honor, the rule requires if you're going to be a party, you have to be present at the preliminary hearing.
Or
Well, I've
representative?
been hearing people say they represented
And, Your Honor, that's
people who are not here.
that's what I'm leading to. For the record, I'd just like to clarify that there are representatives here.
Their representatives are here, yes. And Brad, I think everyone,
Could I say that I represent them? They
Have you?
actually, we deeded property to them from our original property and they now live there.
right, but did they agree before you got here
Yes.
to have you
Yes.
represent them?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
And my son-in-law is on the records from all the emails and things that.
Right, no,
everybody's
that
doing.
it, and I'm not questioning that, I'm questioning that they've agreed that you can represent them
Yes.
for purposes of this hearing.
Yes,
Okay, and what is their name?
Bill and Angela Burton, Burton, 297 Kirk Lane.
Okay, and if you'll fill out a form, and they will be part of the.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sure, they aligned.
They are well within the 2 mile.
Okay, so who is going to be the point persons for the aligned party?
Sabrina. Sabrina's the deputy in the hall.
Yeah, he's Sabrina.
Okay. Oh, I see.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I forgot to, I neglected to include my husband and sons.
Okay. And they've agreed that you can represent them?
Yeah, Austin fought, Jack fought, and Brooks fought.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. Got a lot going on.
I'm Sabrina Hauser. I'm the president of Friends of Dry Canal Creek. And I believe during the course of the next steps, you will have a number of people who will align as members of this group.
Okay. So is that everybody's understanding, that group of people? Yes.
Your Honor, just for clarification, and this would be okay with us, did the folks that were, their names were read into the record, they joined Friends of Dry Canal Creek as members?
Yes.
They all have joined the group as members?
Well,
Or they're all wanting to be aligned?
They're all wanting to be aligned. They are already members. They are asking to be aligned.
I think that answers my question.
Okay, all right. So everyone who broke their, were agreeing that Friends of Dry Canal Creek will they'll be aligned with the Friends of Dry Canal. Okay?
Your Honor?
And there's a separate group, and he's up there.
With Mr. Harrison, who is already named as a, yes.
Yeah, and can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So Doug Harrison again. I have some questions, this is all due to a whole lot of us.
Sure, understandable.
And that's y'all's discretion. Can the people that were in that new donut area, 1 mile, 2 mile, choose to align with Friends of Dry Canal Creek or another affected party, particular need?
Yes.
There are needs, some neighbors, I don't know if that's meets with theirs.
That should be,
Your Honor, at the appropriate time, we were prepared to make a motion to align all the parties as a single party anyway. So if I'm understanding the question, I think that would be okay with us.
right, so they can align with the Friends of Dry Canal Creek or with, if you want to.
Harrison Ranch Group.
Yes.
So someone may be there.
Right.
So
We'll just
as
need
long
to
as that's
know.
okay with-
We'll just need to know. So that's, we can figure that out in the next break, because we'll have to have a break before scheduling. But just so long as everybody is aligned one way or another, so that we're not sending out 500 pieces of paper, or however many it is. Okay. So I think we're good with that for right now, is that?
Your Honor, just for clarification, as
Yes.
we were listening to some of the names that were read into the record, our information indicates that some of these folks are outside the 2 mile radius. If there's one that's just way off, and we find out about it later, we would just like to reserve our objection to, reserve our right to object to party status once we've had a chance to go through the records and look at them more carefully.
Okay,
And then we would file a motion if we felt compelled to do that.
yes, okay. So, okay. So then one of the issues we had raised right before the break was the area where the rock pressure could be moved and both the effect on the, permit, whether it be amendment or some other process, and whether there be public input on that, and then also just figuring out where that area was. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, or you can just leave that right over there. Thank you. We'll gather that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So, Mr. Steele, have you figured out where that area is?
Your Honor, I believe we have, and I've got an exhibit here that I think will be helpful. If I could approach and hand it to you. Your Honor, I know there's a lot of folks here, I've got a couple extra copies of it.
If you could maybe sort of try to spread them out and let people pass them and leave one, is this going to be relevant for witnesses? Okay, well, I'm gonna take these one.
Your Honor, what I've handed out here is what we have at your discretion. There is exhibit, APP three, and I can actually, put Mr. David Nolhoff, to explain what this map looks like, where it came from, exactly what it depicts, and actually walking through it, however you would prefer to handle that.
Well, let's first, you're offering,
We would offer at this time applicant exhibit three.
are there any objections to applicant exhibit 3 being submitted?
We haven't seen the map.
Okay, so it's kind of, it's a map.
Your Honor, it's very similar to some of the mapping that was filed with, that was also in your request. I don't recall anything, this particular was filed in the application.
Is it already within?
I don't believe this particular map is in the administrative record.
Okay. All right, anyone wants to take a look at? Is there a copy upstairs, if you want to see it? Okay.
Your Honor, how does this map differ, this circumference differ from the original one that we've been using?
Okay, then I think we need to have the witness on the stand if we've got questions like that. So she was asking how this map differs from the ones that were in the application.
And Your Honor, that was going to be our position, that we had a initial objection given the lack of documentation at this
Okay.
point, which we withdrawn once it's sponsored by.
Okay, all right, then let's go ahead and get those.
And Your Honor, if we could call Mr. David Nolhoff with Western Environmental to explain the map.
Right? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay.
Mr. Nolhoff, may I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Nolhoff.
Speak up.
We cannot hear you. Speak
Is
louder.
your mic on?
It is, Your Honor. I think I just may need to bring it a little closer when I speak. Can you please state your name for the record?
David Nolhoff,
And can you tell us where you currently work?
Western Environmental.
And can you give us an idea about your educational background?
Yes, so I have an Associate's of Arts and Science degree in Earth Science, then pursued my Bachelor's of Science degree in Meteorology, and then I followed with a Master's of Science in Meteorology, and then I received a Certified Consultant Meteorologist designation from the American Meteorological Society.
And Mr. Nolhoff, I believe you said you're you work for Westwood Environmental, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what is Westwood Environmental?
It's a full-service turnkey environmental consulting firm.
And what are your primary duties at Westwood Environmental?
I am the modeling team leader, and so I conduct air dispersion models for the application process.
And for about how many TCQ air permit applications have you performed that type of work?
Approximately 150, and for about half of those are rock crushing facilities.
And did those applications involve mapping?
Yes, sir.
Mapping similar to the map that I believe we have in front of you that's marked as exhibit applicant 3?
It's very similar type of maps.
And before you worked for Westwood, where were you employed?
I was employed at TCEQ for approximately 3 years and worked on the air dispersion modeling team.
And was mapping involved with that particular position?
Not specifically by me, but I handle mapping software products.
And does your work with Westwood require you to have a good understanding of the latest developments in air dispersion modeling and air quality analyses associated with air permit applications?
Yes, sir.
And you do you have an up-to-date understanding of TCQ and EPA guidance, policies, practices concerning air dispersion modeling and other aspects of air quality applications?
Yes, sir.
And is it appropriate for you to rely on those types of guidance documents from TCQ and EPA?
Yes.
And Your Honor, at this time, I would like to offer Mr. Nolhoff as an expert in air dispersion modeling and other aspects of air quality analyses associated with air permit applications.
Any objection to his designation?
Your Honor, as to air quality modeling, I think saying other aspects of permitting is pretty broad brush. If he wants to better define exactly what that means, then we can reconsider the objection. We don't object for purposes of him being an expert on air quality modeling.
Okay. And could you clarify what you mean by other aspects
I
of
would-
permitting?
I would be happy to, Your Honor. As Mr. Nolhoff stated, he conducted the air dispersion model and prepared air quality analysis for Vulcan's rock pressure application in this case. And we were prepared to call him up later to testify about the air dispersion modeling. So we would like to offer him as an expert on air dispersion modeling, but in that role, he testified earlier that he had prepared about 125 to 150 air quality applications, or he's been involved with those. So we think his experience is a little broader than just air dispersion modeling. For example, the air dispersion modeling exercise includes evaluations of maps like the one that he's got in front of him here.
I will overrule the objection right now, but you can raise it if there are questions that seem like they are outside his general expertise.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right,
Proceed.
you may proceed.
So Mr. Nolhoff, the map that you have in front of you there, and it may not be marked on your copy, but we've asked the court reporter to mark it applicant exhibit 3. Are you familiar with this map?
Yes, sir, I am familiar with it.
And does it indicate in the lower right-hand corner that Westward prepared the map?
Yes, Westward did prepare this map.
And I believe you said, just to make sure the record's clear, you've seen the map before.
Yes, I have seen it before.
Did you utilize this map in either the preparation of the air dispersion model or the preparation for your testimony here today?
In both, sir.
Okay, so are you personally familiar with the area around or where this particular map depicts?
Yes, I am aware of the area around it.
And can you describe that area?
Yes, I can. It's a rural area of Comal County, and the aerial photography that was utilized is typical aerial photography, and so it does represent the area around the rock crusher. The rock crusher in this particular exhibit is the red dot, which you can see it near the northern part of the property, and then there's a 1 mile circle radius around that rock crusher.
In that 1 mile radius, is that depicted by the yellow line?
It is depicted by the yellow line, yes.
And then sort of towards the top of the page, it's kind of a pinkish orange, looks like a road. Is that a highway? What is that?
Right, so that is a road, that's Highway 46, and that's on the north side. And then on the east side, that road is Farm Market 3009.
And just to get oriented, can you, from where the map is, can you describe where the city of New Braunfels and the city of La Verde are located? direction is New Braunfels.
Okay, so direction-wise, the city of New Braunfels is off to the right or to the east, and then the city of Bulverde is off to the left, to the west.
And again, just to make sure I'm clear, and I apologize if I've asked you this before, have you personally been to this site?
Yes, I have been to this site.
And you've driven down Highway 46 there?
Yes,
And what is that road, it looks like there's a road off to the, sort of on the right-hand side of the page.
3009.
And that's a state highway or a local highway?
It's a local highway of farm to market, 3009.
And what does the gray area on this map represent?
That represents Vulcan's proposed site.
And when you say proposed site,
That includes the boundaries of its site where the crusher is proposed to be located.
and your preparation of the air dispersion modeling, were you familiar with any distance limitations on how close the rock crushing facility could get to the property line?
Yes, I am familiar with it.
And what is that? What is that distance limitation?
That distance limitation is 2,119 feet.
So based on the key down in the lower right-hand corner, what is that, how is that distance represented? Or let me back up, I'm not asking you the question very well. Approximately, can you tell from this map, and I think you testified earlier that the rock crusher is the red dot, sort of at the top.
Yes, sir.
Approximately how far from the edge of Vulcan's property line, from Vulcan's site, is that rock crusher located?
No, it's proposed to be located no closer than 2,119 feet from the edge of any portion of that property line.
And based on the proposed location where the rock crusher is now, can you tell by looking at the map about how close it is to the site boundary?
Yes, I can. By utilizing the scale at the lower right, it's no closer than 2,119 feet.
So if the rock crusher moved down towards the lower end of the particular site, then, and you're familiar with the air permitting process at TCQ, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would Vulcan be required to get a permit amendment or a permit alteration or some sort of authorization from TCQ to move that site?
Can you answer that question again? I'm sorry.
If Vulcan decided to move the rock crusher from the current site located there in the red dot, would they be required to get a TCQ authorization to move that facility?
Yes, sir.
And what type of authorization would they have to get?
I don't know. We would have to seek guidance from the TCEQ. It would be just an amendment or an alteration to the existing air quality permit.
But they would have to get some sort of TCQ authorization.
Yes, sir.
And bear with me just a minute. If we, let's say hypothetically, Vulcan decided they wanted or needed to move the rock crusher south, and according to this map, south is on the bottom side, is that correct?
That is correct.
So if they decided to move the rock crusher south within their site boundary, could they get any closer than that? I believe you said it was 2,119 feet.
Right, they could not get closer than 2,119 feet.
And can you tell by looking at this map, would that mean that the rock crusher would have to stay sort of in the center of their property if they moved?
Yes, approximately.
And that's because of the 2,119 foot separation distance from the property line of the site boundary.
Correct.
So if they were to move the rock crusher downward, and if you can bear with me just a minute, if the 1 mile radius that's depicted there by the yellow line, as that 1 mile radius moved down, would that radius include more property than, or more area than say a 2 mile radius as it moved downward? I may not have asked you that question very carefully, but.
It would not include more. It would just include different.
Okay, so if we move the rock crusher located there on the red dot down, say to the bottom part of the property.
Let me rephrase that. That was relative to 2 miles, not 1 mile, right?
And I apologize, I've kind of changed questions.
Okay, so strike my last answer.
I apologize, Mr. Wilhelm. If we move the rock crusher from its current location down towards the southern part of the property, say sort of in the middle, it would still have to comply with that 2,119 foot distance limitation.
Yes, sir.
And if it moved down towards the middle of the property there, let's say, do you see where the yellow line is depicting the 1 mile radius from where it's currently located?
Yes.
Sort of in the center of the property.
Yes.
Does it appear from the map that that would meet the 2,119 foot distance limitation?
From the property line, yes.
Yes. So if the rock crusher was located in the middle of the property on that yellow line, 1 mile from where it is proposed to be located today, if you drew a 1 mile radius around that location, and then you drew a 2 mile radius around the current location where it is, would that encompass the same area?
Yes.
So in other words, if we move the rock crusher down towards the southern part of the property, then the area within the 1 mile radius from the new location would include the property from the 2 mile radius from the current location.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Dolhoff. Your Honor, I will pass the witness.
Mr. Almond? Okay, welcome aboard.
I'd like to,
Yeah, Mr. Almond's next.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor, I do have a few questions for you. Good morning. My name is Eric Allman. I represent certain organizations in this matter. I want to follow up on some of the questions you were asked. You said that if this was moved within, now if this is moved, would a permit alteration or amendment be required, or only if it's moved within that 2,119 distance?
I'm not for sure I'm understanding your question.
This authorization allows the rock crusher to be moved without seeking a permit amendment or permit alteration. Is that correct?
I think I would have to get TCEQ's advisement on that.
If it was moved
On site?
on site, yes.
I'm not for sure how to answer that question.
So you don't know whether this can be moved from the current, there's a red dot on the map in front of you.
Correct.
Do you know whether that red dot can be moved to a different location without the need for an amendment or an alteration?
Okay, so yeah, under that, there would have to be some type of permit action on the existing permit in order to move it somewhere else on site, is what I believe to be true. But I would certainly seek TCEQ's guidance on that matter.
So you yourself don't know the answer to that question?
Right, I don't know it off the top of my head, right?
So far as you know, that could be moved on the site without the requirement for a permit amendment.
I'm not for sure. I mean, my answer is I'm not for sure.
Now, if it were moved within this property, you discussed that the 1 mile distance would still be within the current 2 mile distance from that point. Was that the nature of your testimony?
Yes.
Would the 2 mile radius change if this facility were moved from where it's currently located? Would there be new properties within 2 miles that are not currently within 2 miles?
Yes.
So if one were judging effectiveness by 2 miles from the rock crusher itself, there could be people that are within 2 miles of the new location that are not within 2 miles as depicted in this map.
Yes.
And just because I think that a big question here is whether an amendment is going to be required to move this rock crusher. To your knowledge, it is possible that it may be moved without needing an amendment. You don't have any basis to say, yes, an amendment will require for any movement of this crusher.
I cannot provide you a yes or no answer on that question.
Your Honor, that's all my questions. I asked the witness.
Mr.
No, I have no questions, Your Honor.
Okay, there were some questions over here, and can you get a mic?
Your Honor, for clarification, any other friends of the other folks that were named, have they been online?
They have been aligned, so really, I guess there
Have all of the groups been aligned or just the ones that were named this morning?
Just the ones that were in
Okay. And then Mr. Harrison, he's a party as well, so, okay.
the party, he was named by the commission as a party. If you have questions, I actually have a follow-up question as well, but, yes.
Yes, Doug Harrison, thank you. So there's a red dot at a proposed site on the map you have in front of you.
Am I allowed to answer questions?
I assume at this point I can ask you a question, right? Okay.
He can ask you questions.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a red dot on the map you all shared with us, it's the proposed site.
Yes.
Correct. So if you were to take that map and draw a circle within the map that was 2,119 feet from all boundary lines, what would that area look like?
It would be smaller than the edges of the existing property that
By
you see right now.
2,119 feet? Yeah.
By 2,119 feet all the way around the entire
It'd be a
property.
smaller circle.
Right.
Okay,
And-
and just to be clear, sorry, you can't cut each other off because it'll be very hard on the court reporter.
Your Honor? So,
Just a minute, sorry.
then again, I'm new to this, so my apologies. My understanding is then they could, and maybe Vulcan, I'll ask you for now. If the crusher moved anywhere within 2,119 feet from the boundary, the radius from that crusher moves whenever Vulcan elected to move it. The 1 mile, 2 mile radius move with the crusher.
That is correct.
Okay, and then we've also heard, so far, there are people that Vulcan would like to exclude because they're 0.08 miles from the current proposed site of the portable crusher. And the ones that are 0.08 miles outside, do you believe that red dot can move more than 0.08 miles? It'd still be within the 2119 setback.
Your Honor, we're gonna object to that. I think there's a lot of information in that question.
That was fair enough. How far can the red dot move and still be within the 2119 foot setback?
I need to look at the map for a minute. It depends what portion of the property that you're looking at. So if you're looking on the west side of the property, it would be a guesstimate. I don't really want to guess at distances right now, just looking at a map. I'd like to have a drawing of what that looked like. To be able to answer your question effectively, the bottom line here is I conducted the modeling. And so we're going beyond some of the questions relative to the modeling. And I would need a map in front of me in order for me to really answer your question.
Okay, but Vulcan also proposed you might be an expert on maps and familiar with this area. If the red dot moves, the circumferences moves, and particularly what we're hearing this morning, who's affected, who's not affected, as that radius moves, would there be additional properties and households included in those radius circles as those circles move?
Yes, that would be probably a good conclusion.
Thank you. How hard would it be to draw the map of, instead of a red dot, a red circle of potential crusher area that's 2,119 feet from all boundaries?
Well, I think you're assuming that it's going to move around on site. I don't think that's clear that it's going to move around on site. I think that's in a general
But
assumption.
you don't know that.
It's a conversation right now.
My question, how hard would it be to draw the map that's 2,119 feet setback from all boundaries? So it'd be a red hatched area, color area instead of a dot.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too hard to do that.
So I think it's hard for all of us to know if they're gonna draw a line, we gotta have a line somewhere. I think it's fair to say that anybody that would be within whatever the radius is of that red area, not a red proposed dot of a portable device, because things happen in business, and stuff moves because it's more expedient. Would it make sense to you to let all those people figure out whether they're within the 2 miles of the red area, potential zone of operation or not?
I don't think I don't think I can answer that question. I conducted the air dispersion modeling. I'm here to present information relative to the results of the modeling. You're asking me questions beyond what I can answer.
So if he's not really a math expert, maybe they shouldn't put him up as a math expert. But, I think we have to figure out what's the maximum distance it could move from Your Honor, I think there are lots of other people here that would be within that new distance radius. If we were to say we gotta draw a hard line somewhere, it would be nice if our map expert or somebody else could say, here's the actual area that could be in with minor permit notification, so that nobody in the public ever got an opportunity to comment on a new location.
And I just had a follow-up question, because Mr. Steele asked you if it moved from the center dot to this radius line, if that, from there, a radius extending out from that would include people within the 2 miles. But there's nothing preventing you from going beyond that either, because it looks like there's some area farther south that's still probably within the 2,119, but that would be outside that yellow radius line.
And I'm answering approximations.
Right, but there could still potentially be something down, sorry. And I'll let him see this down, this portion, that is probably based on your scale, on your residence would be outside this 1 mile, but also within 2,000, correct?
So the question is, if I move that circle down to the south,
Yes,
and the plan,
yes.
your question is that approximately a new circle of 2 miles radius?
No, Mr. Seal had asked you, he said assuming there was somebody on this line, that 1 mile from this line would be encompassed within the 2 miles that he had agreed to, correct?
Yes.
If you go outside the line, is that representation also true? Is
Okay.
that also within the 2 miles?
Probably not.
Okay, no, that's what it shows. Okay, Mr. Seal, would you like to redirect? It has to be people who are, we've got the 2 aligned parties are the ones asking questions right now. Mr. Seal.
And Your Honor, I don't think I have anything else. I think what we were trying to demonstrate here is to try to give you an idea about, if the rock pressure did move, and at this point, I don't believe there's any evidence that Vulcan intends to move it. We don't know if Vulcan's gonna move it. I don't know what their business plans are. That's really not the purpose of the hearing today. But the reason we put this map up, and I think since we've got the map into evidence, it's kind of illustrative of the point that we kind of needed to argue. So I don't have any more questions for you.
All right, so I don't think we have an answer yet about the process. They move it down to the line.
Your Honor, are you speaking to whether or not it would need to be done for an alteration or an amendment? Our understanding is that they would require just an alteration that would not be subject, but they would have to resubmit modeling that is in compliance with our rules and regulations.
So what you're saying is people within, say, even 1 mile of where it could be moved would never have notice? Or would never have any understanding under Mr. Seal's version?
If it was just to change the location, yes, if they're doing other things that may require an actual amendment to go to public notice.
So, Mr. Seal, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, Your Honor, and I think what we were attempting to demonstrate here, and I think we've done it to some extent, is if the rock pressure moved down towards the southern part of the property, in an extreme example, if the 1 mile radius moved down with it, at least as an approximation, what I heard Mr. Noel say is that it appears that the new 1 mile radius of the new location would encompass the area that we've offered in our 2 mile radius to a substantial degree.
Right, but his answer to me was that it would not include all of it.
That's correct, Your Honor, and we were sort of attempting to try to answer the question you had asked about if it moved, how would the range of potentially affected parties change, and that's what we were trying to do here. When we offered the 2 mile radius, we didn't intend for the 2 mile radius to move if the rock pressure moved. The reason we offered the 2 mile radius was to be overly conservative. I think I mentioned to you earlier that based on prior TCQ decisions, they typically use a 1 mile rule of thumb, which I believe is reflective of their decision in this case on granting and denying hearing request. We went out to 2 miles to be over-inclusive, and And I think generally, and Your Honor, you're exactly correct, it wouldn't be all encompassing, but I think based on our 2 mile radius that we've agreed not to object to folks, it would substantially, those people would already substantially be included if the rock pressure were to move down as far as it could go, given the 2,119 foot distance limitation.
Your Honor, may I comment?
Yes.
At this point, we're here to consider the impacts of the permit, and that includes the full scope of the activities authorized by the permit. And in that sense, the difference between an alteration and a permit amendment is tremendously different, and we don't have clarification here. Anything that may be done without a permit amendment is encompassed within what this permit authorizes. And so, we think that it is relevant to consider any locations this may be moved without a permit amendment. We have no definition yet of whether these changes in location would require a permit. As to, I think Mr. Steele just commented that all distances within 2 miles may be within 1 mile. I do think there's a certain equal treatment issue here, that if you're going to apply a 2 mile standard from the batch plan to admit people as parties to the hearing, that 2 miles, the 2 mile standard should apply to all areas where the batch plan is to be authorized. I think otherwise you're treating some people differently than others based on just where it happens to be the permanent proposed location, which definitely could change if that much is clear.
Well, let me ask this, and I realize we're all at a you don't have a blown-up copy of this map, do you, Mr. Steele?
No, well, I may have one copy of a larger version, but I don't have it on poster board, and it's not. I have.
Is it that same map?
Yes. Your Honor, is this gentleman, is he aligned with?
Yes, he is. He's aligned.
Okay, well, this is actually a different map, so we'll, yes, but it's, no, it's actually a separate map. So I'm just gonna use, this is the one that's been admitted for right now. So I'm gonna sort of pass this around, but, has everyone had a chance to see this map? People who have not been parties, who are outside the, and I recognize that 2 miles is a concession, 1 mile is the general standard that the TCEQ has used in the past. But I am concerned about ones who are outside of this 1 mile boundary, but who might, assuming where the pressure could, or the pressure could move down here within the 2,000, who might be within 1 mile of that, who are not within 2 miles. I'm sorry, I'm not being very loud. Does that make sense? Does anyone need to see, so from within like about 1 mile radius of around here on this map? Is there anybody who is not within the 2 miles, but would be within 1 mile down this area?
Your Honor,
Yes, ma'am.
my name is Kim Inquist, and I'm aligned with Frank. My problem.
Oh, we need a mic, I'm sorry,
Okay.
whatever. And you're a member already of Friends?
I'm aligned with Friends. My name is Kim
Are
Inquist.
you aligned, or are you?
I am aligned with Friends.
But are you a party? You're a
I'm
member
not,
of
but
Friends.
my point is in asking me if I'm a party, if I'm aligned, or I'm within a 2 mile radius, is everything that we are given at this point in reference to the crusher being moved is, I heard Mr. Steele talk about assumptions and everything. These are arbitrary. There's nothing on that map that depicts an actual setback as to where the crusher could be placed. We had a witness who couldn't answer anything definitively. It was all assumptions and guesses because there's nothing on there with measurements. So there's nobody here right now that can determine whether they are within that 2 mile radius if it were to move. So how can those people determine if they will be affected parties? So right now, the only people that are considered are those that are absolutely within the depicted circle, but that circle could move, and that's based on something that has now been said
would not require notification. Our properties aren't portable, but the crusher is. So anybody who may be within that 2 miles doesn't know it at this point, and they want to disregard those people. And Mr. Seal is now saying that those people outside 1 but within 2, instead of being in earnest saying we have now included those people, he's trying to back off of that and say we're doing those people a favor that are outside. No, they have claimed within 2 miles is an affected party. You can't put qualifiers on that.
Okay, well, if you'll hold on just a minute, Mr. Shield. Do we have a map with the setbacks?
I don't believe we have one prepared here today, Your Honor.
Okay, well then, given that, I think we're going to have to sort of be a little fuzzy on it, and y'all are gonna have to be okay with being a little bit fuzzy without a good map. But I do think it is fair to say that ones who are outside the 2 mile, that you agree to, and I do appreciate that. The standard is generally about 1 mile, but who might be within a 1 mile radius if it moved down to the southwest quadrant, but within the 2, given the setbacks.
Your Honor, if I understand what you're saying, I don't believe we would object to that.
Right.
In fact, what we were attempting, and maybe I didn't do a very good job, what we were attempting to show is that given a 2 mile distance limitation from the existing location, that would encompass largely a 1 mile radius if the location were to move as far down south as it could go. My understanding is that it's an 80-year site, that, you know, the business plans may be that they may stay where they are forever. They may stay there for 10 years or 20 years. It may never happen. But, Your Honor, I think I understand what you're saying, and I don't think we would object to that. But if I could respond to one of the suggestions that Mr. Holman made, that it's not fair for us to say, if we're gonna apply 2 miles where it's located now, we have to apply 2 miles if it moves. It's our prerogative to decide who we object to and who we don't.
That's noted. But, so I would like to figure out, and I don't know if we need to go off the record and maybe have y'all come up and look at the map more closely, but to see if there's anybody, because it is very small, but there is an area down here well outside this 1 mile radius on this map that I think if you drew a mile radius from one of these spots, you would not be hitting everybody within the 2 miles. And I'm sorry, I wish I had a more concise way of explaining that, and probably somebody else can say it clearer.
And Your Honor, I would like to note for the record, that's based on a very rough scaling of this
Yes.
map. Our understanding, our conclusion is that there is an area that's to be located that is further than 1 mile from the current location. So that even some people
Right.
will be within, so that it's not necessarily true that all people within a mile are encompassed within the 2 mile radius.
And that's what, we're agreeing on that. I think that's fair from this estimate too. I think there are people who are probably within a mile of this sort of southwestern area that are not within the 2 mile radius based just, I mean, it's rough, but based on like my pulling my finger.
Your Honor, we do have a map that shows a 2 mile radius from its current location. I don't have a map right here to offer an evidence, but to the extent that would be helpful for people, we can provide. I have a copy.
Well, we can take a look at that, but I think what we are saying is that if you move this down here, it's a mile from there, it's probably outside the 2 mile radius. But we don't really have a very precise way of measuring that.
Your Honor, because we cannot be precise today and we can't be definitive, then today there cannot be a final definitive list of affected parties.
Well, here's the other issue. We're under a super tight deadline under the law of the state of Texas. Like this, we can't really fix that except with a very small thing. There is, the law that we have to file basically says we've got to get this whole thing decided within 180 days of today. So that's been a relatively recent change, and we do have to get this nailed down. We have to get a scheduling order nailed down. So what I would suggest we do, we take a break. look at for people who
She's going to allow
are
it. Hearing
in,
what she's saying, she's
in
gonna allow it.
that area I described. See if there are additional people who fall under a mile from there. And it's not gonna be the world's most precise, but given the evidence that we have, I think we can do that. Yes.
When will those people be heard of bargaining game parties that live outside? Now, we have a lot of people talk effectively from 2 miles more or less. When do we get to speak and ask to be named parties for those people outside that 2-mile jurisdiction that they arbitrarily have done in the past?
Okay, we can't, what we're trying to do is go step by step, so we are going the ones that were within the 2 miles that they would not object to. If there are ones within an estimated mile of where this location could be, are you going to object to those?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I may have missed that question.
Sure. And it may have not been phrased very well, but people who are within a mile of like an area down here, are you going to object to those?
People outside a mile of that area down there, if the rock crusher was located on the yellow line.
Not outside, within a mile of, no, below the yellow line, because it certainly can go below the yellow line on this.
And what we would do is, I think we would agree to a permit condition not to go further than a mile south from where the rock crusher is located there today. Not past the yellow line.
I don't know that you can do that for purposes of affecting party status, that seems a little.
And that'll be our position, Your Honor. We have a draft permit here before us today. It says what it says.
Right.
And it proposes here today, that's the draft permit we
Right.
work on.
You could have included that in your application, but did not. So, we're, just a minute. Yes, Mr. Harrison.
Doug Harrison again. So the 5280, this is the 1 mile that the applicant is looking for,
Yes.
plus the 2119 setback is 7,399 feet. So potentially they'd be willing to consider an effective party, anybody that's within 7,399 feet. That covers your 2119 setback and your 1 mile to whatever range it could go to. Now, you know, a whole bunch of people up here that don't know how many feet they are away, so it's gonna be difficult, but if they're willing to say, okay, we'll go up to 73,99, is basically a mile and a half, or whatever number, round number they'd like to apply to it, that for the sake of you moving along quickly, efficiently today, maybe that would be easier. Again, 7319 is 5280, 5,208 feet per mile, plus the 2119 setback is 7399.
Your Honor, we'd be happy to take these up on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. That might be what we have to do. Does anybody need to see this map to know whether they think they're within a mile if the plant moved down southwest, but we're not within the 2 miles before? Because if there's nobody who meets that description, then we don't really need to spend a lot of time on it.
Your Honor, and we have a map that I understand was assembled by the county. It shows in half-mile increments, distances from the property line up to 5 miles.
That would
from
be
the
helpful.
property line.
Okay. But is there anybody who they think meets that description? No? Yes, sir.
I would be probably 1 point. Hi, I'm Mike Zimmerman. I live on 29567 Street of 190. If they moved that proposed rock crusher to the south, then I would be approximately 1.1, 1.2 miles from that proposed site.
Okay, well, do we need to take, Mr. Steele, did you want to take some evidence about Mr. Zimmerman? Sure.
We have more.
Yes, we'll take a few minutes.
Your Honor, while they're looking into that, can we ask for a clarification that whether I'm an affected party? I am within the 2-mile radius.
Yes, you've been
but
arguing.
even if I didn't comment during the public comment period.
Okay, so the people we went through in names, they are parties. They've been aligned either with the Friends of Dry Creek or with Mr. Harrison, depending on their preference. Yes. Yes.
I'd be interested, it seems to be a pinpoint, what is the total square footage of the rock crusher and all of the apparatus that goes with it, the total square feet? I mean, we're not talking about pinpoint, we're talking about
Honor, we may be able to, we may have a solution.
Okay,
that
great.
help. You know, as with our 2 mile, distance limitation, you know, we're willing to be flexible, provided, there may be another party down here that, if the rock pressure movement might be within 1 mile, we would be willing to be flexible, not to object to them, as long as they're willing to align with the other parties that are already aligned.
Okay, so right now, we're discussing this in the room, right? I'm sorry, did I get your wrong?
No, you're fine.
There's more.
I'm sorry, was there, no, okay,
I would be aligned with one of the groups.
okay.
And can you,
Yes, we'll do that again. And this, will you stand up again? And I'll put you under oath. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, will you state your name again?
Michael Zimmerman,
Michael Zimmerman. Okay.
29256 FM 309.
And maybe if you would come up and show on one of the maps, if you could show where you.
Yeah, right now, I don't know if it's going to be on, I'll be happy to.
Okay. where you-
But since we're talking approximations,
We are.
okay, then I would think that that approximation would be right on my property.
Okay. And I think Mr. Almond has a.
This is a top about review.
We should discuss right now and just see if he's okay, and then we'll go back on the record.
It's a plug-in battery. It's not a Wi-Fi battery. I thought you wanted to go. No. I'm good.
agree to be aligned with the other parties, we won't object to the post.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and do we have a call for you? Did you, okay, so Michael Zimmerman will be a party and be aligned with either, Friends of Jackson Mountain Creek or with the surveyors. Okay. So then we have, other people who want to be parties, but who are outside either that 2 mile or that 1 mile.
Yeah, but other people.
Are there people who are outside of those who would still like to have a hearing, okay, a request heard? Okay, all right, we will go ahead and we'll start this way and we'll go this way on the first floor and then when we go to the second floor, we'll do that same. And everyone's going to need to have a mic and I need to make sure that anyone who's made a request is split up. Well, we're starting with so anyone who was ever here who was outside that zone but still wanted to have a party request. And also, because the Friends of Jackson Mountain Creek are already a party, if you are a member, then essentially your membership, your organization has been represented. But if you're, yeah.
Hi, yes, my name is Keith Randolph. I live in Yard Springs Ranch, about 3.8 miles north of the proposed crusher site. I'm a retired biomedical scientist. And the discussion so far and the practice by TCQ in granting permits and surveying centers around modeling as a rational way to predict risk. And so we have a 2 mile radius now for discussion. Late last year, University of Texas at Houston published a paper where they have actually measured using satellite imagery particulate matter pollution over the whole state of Texas. And they show that in Comal County, the particulate matter average levels for particulate matter pollution for 2008 to 2013 are at the WHO hazard level now. This is a measurement, not a model. Though I understand the value of modeling, TCEQ does not, to my knowledge, measure pollution from quarries in Comal County. They model it based on throughput. My point here is that the risk is well beyond 2 miles. This is arbitrary, and I understand the value and the practice of that in the permitting process. But at some point, we need a record noted that individuals in Comal County now, based on this recent research from the University of Houston, are now at risk from particulate matter pollution. And so with continued permitting, including this one, there's going to be many more people affected by this than just those living inside of a 2 mile radius. So I can show you all of the references for this. It's in the peer-reviewed literature. Very credible scientists have done this work. It's important for this to be a matter of record. That modeling now needs to answer to measurement. The measurements say Comal County residents are at risk now. Not those just 2 miles from the proposed quarry site. Comal County residents.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Randolph? Any of the lawyers?
Your Honor, we would like, just for the record, Judge, that was really expert testimony. So just for the record, I'm just going to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? We'll go ahead and we'll hear everybody and then we'll make some decisions. Okay. Yes.
Hi, I'm Mike Stunning, STEMIG, live at 1357 Cavatari. I'm 2.65 miles away from the proposed rock crusher location. And I did submit an original to the TCEQ here on staff. And I would like to be included as an effective party.
Are you, is that for the north side? Are you north of the area?
Northeast.
Northeast, okay.
Yeah, but my kids go to the high school and the middle school that are close by, so even though my house is 2.69 miles, they'll be driving by a fence line into the state school year.
And does anyone have questions for Mr. Summit? The lawyer? All right. And others over there?
My name is Judy Krupp, K-R-U-P. I live at 3012 Comel Springs, also in the Mountain Springs Ranch development. I believe we're approximately 2.5 to 3 miles northwest of this proposed site. We have filed comments and participated at every step of the way, and we would like to be included as affected parties.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cook, for Ms. Cook, sorry? No? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Grace Murphy. I live at 311 Lookout Ridge in New Braunfels. I'm approximately 3.49 miles to the rock crusher. My husband and I also were rejected from the initial TCEQ report because of where we live. I'm concerned about the water quality and the protection for humans and endangered species.
Anyone else in this section? Yes, ma'am. You're very first, you waited a long time.
I'm Trudy Striegel. I live at 6027 Keller Ridge. I am 3.49 miles from the rock crusher site, closer to the proximity of the quarry. I was rejected from the first hearing as an affected party due to proximity, so I would like to be included as an affected party now.
Okay, you're gonna have a hard time with my name.
Okay, great.
My name is Betty Abalafia Rosenzweig. Should I spell it? Abalafia-Rosenzweig. And I live with my husband Mark, same last name. And I'd like to be named as an affected party. I live at 112 Fort Creek, also in Mountain Springs Development. We've estimated that we're about 4.5 miles from the rock crusher, but we live northwest of the quarry, and the prevailing winds most of the year head in our direction. One thing in discussing this, we were talking to my family, we were talking about the fires that were in California, and we were visiting Colorado, and the effects of the fires were very prevalent in Colorado. So to arbitrarily pick a mark at 1 mile or 2 miles seems arbitrary, and it seems like expanding to 5 miles is very reasonable. Other concerns are about how it's going to impact traffic, all the schools in the area, young drivers going up and down Highway 46. There's a lot of risks that go beyond just the air quality. So we'd like to be named.
Anybody else over on that? Yes, sir.
My name is David Fletcher. I live at 1847 Rush Creek in the Mountain Springs development, approximately 3.48 miles from the property of the crusher. And again, I'm requesting to be an affected party due to distance.
My name is Dave Cornato. My wife Debbie and I would like to be named as affected parties. We live within a 5-mile radius of the proposed site. We live at 2141 Appalachian in the Vintage Oaks subdivision.
Do you have a sense of how far you are from the proposed?
We're within the 5-mile radius, and it's somewhere just outside the 4-mile radius.
Okay, so between 4 and 5 miles. Okay. Anyone else over on that section? That was it. Anyone in the middle section? Yes.
My name is Sally Harvey. I'm here speaking for my husband as well, Richard. Our property is located within the Vintage Oaks development, and and is 3.87 miles from the proposed Vulcan Quarry crusher. It is also important to note the amenity center for the Vintage Oaks, which has an outdoor pool, is 2.83 miles from the proposed site, while the gym is 3.11 miles. This is important as we often frequent the pool and anticipate using the facilities of the new gym. In addition, we walk our 2 dogs every morning. Our routes extend into areas that are 2.64 miles from the site. Finally, as military veterans, our health care is provided both by the VA and Brooke Army Medical Center. Our primary transportation route is via FM 3009. Yes, I have. Our personal justifiable interest, issue A, negative impact on human health to include sensitive subgroups and physical property. Issue B, whether conditions in the proposed permit will adequately protect against dust emissions from the proposed plant, including during periods of high winds. And issue O, identified in the referral as negative impact upon human health and welfare related to emissions of silica from the proposed plant. Richard and I moved into our new house in Vintage Oaks in November of 2017. Our decision to retire in this area was predicated on a number of factors, to include the sense of community within the hill country, the natural beauty of the area, and the absence of noise, pollution, and traffic. Between us, we've served over 60 years in uniform, time which has included multiple combat deployments, to include years of service in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, as well as duty in many other austere environments. Neither of us retired unscathed from health concerns related to our military service, and we've both been identified as 100% disabled by the VA. Richard is 68, and I'm 64. Ages that characterize us both as elderly, which I'm sad to say, and therefore members of a sensitive group. Richard has already been diagnosed with COPD, asthma, and in 2005 nearly died from double pneumonia. I have hypertension and am being treated for squamous cell skin cancer and am regularly monitored for a spot on my lung. We are both lifelong non-smokers. Shortly after moving in, we adopted 2 puppies who quickly have become integral members of our family. One of our dogs already has allergies and reduced lung function. The impact of inhaling particulate matter upon their health mirrors that of humans, diminishing the respiratory tract's normal functions and immune defenses. We purchased our land not only with the idea of building a home, but with a plan to build much of our own food. This decision was based on the benefits of gardening, but also as a therapeutic approach to PTSD, which we both have been diagnosed. We have planted 12 fruit trees and sown a diverse vegetable garden. While plants are used to reduce particulate pollution in urban areas, those plants are not designed for human consumption. Studies have demonstrated that silica particulates can cause stomatal closure in plants, leading to cell and tissue damage, leaf necrosis, and hindrance of photosynthesis. There is general consensus that silica exposure is hazardous within the workplace, so it defies logic that the same exposure does not present risk to human behavior. In selecting the location of our retirement home, we specifically sought a site with minimal air pollution, but now we're faced with a very real possibility that our daily activities, overall health, and lifespan will be curtailed as a direct effect of the contaminants arising from the applicant's crusher operations. This case pits the desires of an out-of-state, multi-million-dollar commercial enterprise against the health, safety, and welfare of Texans, a group who have fought against a well-funded resource company armed primarily with heart and conviction. Our home is in the direct focus of the winds 75% of the year. At risk here is larger than the hazards associated with a single quarry plucked in the middle of an established community, not a rural setting. The risk, TCEQ and OPEC seem to have set aside their responsibility to ensure the health and safety of Texans in the favor of economic interest of a company bent on profits at any cost. While we would expect the applicant to take every opportunity to ensure that its bankroll is protected and profits ensured, we find it beyond egregious that TCEQ, who's charged with protecting our health and safety, and OPEC, whose task is to ensure that relevant legal evidence is provided to the Commission, has failed to provide the necessary legal standards and scientific evidence to support the establishment of an arbitrary 1 or 2 mile radius to determine who and who's not an affected person. Approval of this application will result in a lifelong and disastrous impact upon our health, safety, and enjoyment of our property, and we demand to be included as members of the affected parties.
Your Honor, if I might, this is not a public comment session. We have extensive.
Okay, whoever, please stop this thing. It's really not appropriate. This is a court proceeding. Thank you.
And Your Honor, we fully realize that, folks that are asking to be affected parties certainly have a right to state their position. But if they could, we could ask that they limit it to explaining why they're affected parties. It just seems like we're getting into a lot of expert type testimony being offered by folks that haven't been proven to have the qualifications to say what they're saying. And the reason we're concerned is we don't want to get into that.
Okay, well, I'm going to let people have their say what they want to say. I do recognize there are different standards of expert testimony versus non-expert testimony, but I think this is the opportunity for people to say what they want to say. I really am serious. We do need to keep this more like this is not a public meeting. I mean, it is kind of a public meeting, but it's not a meeting, it is a proceeding. So we do need to, like you would in a courtroom.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Mays, and I live at 1953 Pinotage in Vintage Oaks. I'm a professional environmental engineer, so I know a lot about the subject I'm about to speak to. I moved into my home 8 days after the air permit was filed. Knowing this quarry would have been operating within 3 miles of my home has been extremely stressful for the past year and a half. And we have 80 years looming if the permit is issued. My physical well-being and anxiety has been affected more than the general public with respect to the quarry, or they would be here like the rest of us in this room. For that matter, all of the people in this room are affected more than the general public. I am a scientist and environmental engineer and started my career at TCEQ in modeling. I learned what was required to get a permit approved and that all applicants are not the same. I see nothing to tell me that picture has changed with TCEQ in the past 40 years of my career. I've also permitted similar facilities, and the more study I've done on this permit application, the more things don't add up to either being a good neighbor or protecting the public welfare. Just a couple of examples. The site review is totally inaccurate, inadequate, and does not appropriately consider the compliance history of the applicant. In fact, my review of the average compliance history over the most recent 5-year period suggests that TCEQ may have been able to deny the permit outright if the proper review had been done. The rating that is currently shown for this applicant is mathematically impossible if you look at the raw data and make the calculation yourself. So my anxiety ramps up at looking at what's been presented here. Switching to the modeling, and I don't want to discuss the modeling because I agree wholeheartedly that this is not about modeling at this point. It's about what we are actually living with in this county now. We all know that Comal County was almost named non-attainment by the US EPA, and when I review their data as to the basis of that decision, it's wholly inadequate and technically indefensible. This county is probably non-attainment today. But actual data will tell us that, and I have seen some of the data that's been collected in the past year, and it both shows that some of the assumptions in the modeling are so totally inadequate that there's no way to say that that tool is technically defensible. Health and welfare. My family suffers from asthma, allergies, and my mother died in 2018 of COPD. She was never a smoker, and her COPD is probably largely environmentally induced. So the future use of my property, I live in the direction north-northeast, approximately 2.5 to 3 miles from the site. 10% of the year, the total year, the prevailing winds are in the direction of my home. A 2-mile, whatever radius, when we know that dust can travel from Africa to central Texas over thousands of miles, is arbitrary and, again, indefensible compared to what we know about data that we've collected in the last year about what we're currently living with. I garden, I cook for people who are ill, I raise all of my herbs and so forth for that. And I also believe that I'm technically as qualified to determine how I am affected, not only today, but in the future, as anyone else making an arbitrary decision about that distance. And I'm also the most qualified to say how I have been physically and mentally affected just by virtue of this application being filed. I chose to retire this community. I started my design on my house in 2016, and like I said, moved in 8 days after this permit was filed. And I don't have a chance to move now. This is my retirement home. So I'm a little bit angry, but I'm certainly willing to work in any way with this group to do the best thing for all of us, and respectfully request approval as an affected person on this matter.
I appreciate that, but we've got to keep this like a sport. Does anyone have questions? No? Next person.
Good morning. My name is Jack Olivier. I wish to thank the court for your patience today. I have had a long career as a professional geologist, mostly living in Houston. In 2015, we decided to leave Houston because of the air pollution coming from petrochemical plants and other sources. We moved to our home at 1509 Cabernet, New Braunfels. We thought we had done our due diligence by selecting a location on the far west side in a more rural suburban area. We also believed that being situated in the middle of the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone, a state-recognized environmentally sensitive area, would offer us some protection from the large quarries like those located along Interstate 35. Our house is 2.99 miles from the proposed rock crusher. But we know that dust or particulate matter can be carried long distances, especially during periods of high winds that occur frequently in our area. Therefore, I think applying a 5-mile radius around the proposed rock crusher rather than a 1-mile radius would be much more reasonable. Personally, I am 67 years of age, and unfortunately that puts me in an age group that is particularly vulnerable to health risks of exposure to fine particulate matter. I am probably more concerned about lung-related issues than most people because I saw my grandfather die from emphysema. I will never forget his constant wheezing, coughing, and shortness of breath that limited him to living inside his house. So briefly, I'm going to go through a couple of the issues related to SOAH for further consideration, and this will be based on my knowledge of geology. I would briefly like to mention air modeling. I have no issue with the model. I do not understand it. But I would like to speak to the points or the values that were inserted into the model. I do have issues with those. The input values for PM10 and PM2.5 were taken from 13 miles away by my calculation in Selma, Texas, and 28 miles away in southeast San Antonio. This is too far away, in my opinion, to be trusted in Cornell County. And then another input that I have a strong problem with is the value for silica, SiO2, that was used in their model, 0.2%. I find this value extremely low to be used as an average for the volume of limestone to be quarried at this site. The Edwards limestone, which is primarily calcium carbonate, contains silica in the form of chert, a microcrystalline quartz, or SiO2. The distribution of chert is highly variable. A laboratory report that I've seen submitted to TCEQ indicates that only a single sample was measured. Based on what I know about the Edwards chert, and I see a lot of it in my backyard, I believe the average should be closer to 6% or 30 times times greater than the value used in this model. Another issue I'd like to raise is the inadequate TCEQ enforcement. I have personally witnessed on multiple occasions large white clouds of dust emanating from the quarry located in Hunter, Texas, along Interstate 35 inside the Comal County line. I've also heard complaints from residents in Garden Ridge, Texas about dust is coming from nearby quarries coating their homes. This shows me there is a problem with enforcement in Comal County. Until air monitors are installed in Comal County, TCEQ does not even have the proper tools to necessarily independently determine if quarry operators are abiding by its air pollution limits. And last but not least is the issue of inadequate site review. Again, as a geologist, I'm very concerned that the site review for the proposed quarry has not sufficiently considered the potential for damaging the Edwards Aquifer due to its site's location in the middle of the recharge zone. In that area, through a series of faults and fractures known as the Vulcan Fault Zone, the Edwards limestone that is exposed at the surface here steps down to the subsurface below New Braunfels and San Antonio, where the Edwards groundwater is a primary source of municipal water supply. Unfortunately, the limestone section to be quarried at FM 3009 site is the basal Edwards Upper Glen Rose Formation. This happens to be the most prone zone in this part of the county for the formation of large caves and caverns. Natural Bridge Caverns and Brocken Bat Cave are the best known examples. However, according to the Texas Speleological Survey, there are 26 main caves found within 2 miles of the quarry boundary. And I used 2 miles because that is the current known length of Natural Bridge Caverns. It's only the 3rd largest in Comal County. Number 1 goes to Honey Creek Cave in the western part of the county. That is over 20 miles long, Your Honor. And so until these caves have been explored, we don't know what is underneath this area. Immediately to the south of the Vulcan site is found Double Decker Cave, and I believe the owner of that cave is here today. It's not known because it's located on public property, on private property. It's reported to be 682 feet long, 104 feet deep, and it's just one of 10 caves that are found on that property in the cluster. With more exploration, these caves can be found to extend much, much farther. On the Vulcan property itself, 1,500 acres, formerly known as the White Ranch. I was told by the ranch foreman that behind the house he lived in, there's an unnamed cave, 12 feet by 12 feet by 15 feet. So it's not a question of if there are caves at the Vulcan site. It's about how many, how large, and how interconnected they are to the recharge zone. These caves are an integral part of the Edwards Aquifer recharge system that quickly transports groundwater with little time for water filtration. A large quarry in the middle of the recharge zone can be expected to act as a funnel, especially during times of extreme flooding, to direct any pollutants into the subsurface. So in conclusion, there are currently 12,000 residents, so it's not that rural in my opinion, that live within 5 miles of the proposed rock crusher, but many more are coming. Meyer Ranch is a subdivision currently going in that will have 1,600 lots. Its entrance is just 3,000 feet from the corner of Highway 46 and FM 3009, which is also the corner of the quarry property. Much more needs to be done at all levels of government, both state and local, to ensure the protection of its citizens and environment. Being one of those citizens that will be put at risk by the proposed quarry, I request once again to be deemed an affected party at a contested case hearing. Thank you. And before I forget, I am representing a neighbor of mine, and I have his permission to do this.
What's your name?
His name, well, is James D. Doyle and Joyce A. Doyle. They live at 200 Cedar Park, Canyon Lake, Texas. And I'll read their request. Our residence is 4.66 miles northeast of the site of the proposed rock crusher. The rock crusher and mining operation will produce particulate matter air pollution. Studies show this is strongly linked to lung cancer, COPD, asthma, emphysema, and heart disease. Our residents will be downwind of the crusher site, particularly with prevailing southerly winds in July and August, and intermittently at other times of the year. Scientific studies of dust transport demonstrate that rock dust can be transported long distances from the source. Consequently, our proximity to the mining and crusher operation means we will be affected more than the general public. We believe our age will make us more susceptible to adverse health consequences from the dust. And Joyce Doyle has a past history with asthma and may be particularly impacted by the increased dust. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your indulgence, Your Honor. My name is Richard Cady, K-E-A-D-Y, and I'm here today representing myself and my wife, Joyce. We live at 1244 Merlot in the Vintage Oak subdivision, and our home is located at 2.37 miles, 3.82 kilometers from the Vulcan Quarry portable rock crusher. On the Vulcan fence line, located at State Highway 46 in 3009, our residence is 1.7 miles distance. Our residence is located in an east-northeast direction in relation to the proposed Vulcan rock crushing location. This results in winds blowing from the crusher over my residence, principally in the fall of the year. According to wind data recorded by the New Braunfels Municipal Airport for the months of September, October, and November 2018, they're particularly concerning. Data from 22nd September to 22nd December 2018 for winds blowing primarily in an east or northeast direction average 8.6 miles per hour, with maximum winds exceeding 15 to 20 miles an hour occurring. Please note that the above months are the principal growing season for fruits and vegetables for fall, and therefore most damaging to acceptable crop production arising from fugitive dust emissions. Although this period is typically the most enjoyable for outdoor use, I've said also, this period is typically the most enjoyable for outdoor use and entertainment for my wife and myself. Therefore, our quality of life will be adversely impacted by harmful fugitive dust, restricting us to indoor activities only. Additionally, our two beloved Cocker Spaniels, Watson and Charlie, will have very restricted time outdoors due to the damaging air quality, particularly during this time of year. As I indicated my request for the TCEQ to be an affected party, my wife Joyce Cady suffers from a pulmonary issue that restricts her lung capacity and causing her to cough frequently. She remains under the care of a pulmonary specialist, Dr. Mohammed Tawhid, with the diagnosis of disorder of lung, ICD-10J98.4, and further diagnostic tests are scheduled. Her condition requires active health monitoring. Any further degradation of her outdoor air quality would require her to remain indoors. Again, if the Vulcan rock crushing quarry is granted an operational permit, we'd be forced to move to a location that would provide a safe level of air quality. This would be a reduction of residential value for us as well as the loss of our retirement home. Additionally, as a senior citizen, I'm not scared to say that, age 72, one of life's pleasures that I particularly enjoy, and that is raising fruits and vegetables. I have a small fenced plot where I raise tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, squash, and have good success for fall crops. Also, I'm fond of peaches in the spring and key limes mostly year-round. In the last couple of years, we have moved since in our retirement home, the crops have been very prolific. I am fearful that the dust arising from the Vulcan rock crushing operation will descend and damage the foliage and result in a diminished or reduced crop. This reduction of quality of life is simply not warranted for a profit-driven aspiration of a rock crushing quarry superimposed an existing residential subdivision of close to 3,000 residents. One of the TCE commissioners' issues referred to SOAH for a more detailed review and discovery was issue number 6. And it relates to whether cumulative impacts of nearby operations were adequately considered. We now have evidence that Como County is worse than we thought in terms of being at risk for exposure to air pollution arising from the aggregate industry. Dr. Keith Randolph, who spoke earlier, recently produced a revised white paper that's enclosed with my brief here. It's entitled, Evidence that Como County Residents Are at Risk for Exposure to Air Pollution from the Aggregate Industry. The key takeaway from this paper is researchers from the Harvard University T.H. Chan School of Public Health in Houston have revised the World Health Organization health risk exposure to 2.5 ppm downward, such that residents exposed to air pollutants are subject to significant risk for increased mortality for PM 2.5 exposures. Como County residents had exposures well in excess of the old threshold of 12, but now the threshold has been lowered to 10. This is the direct result of extensive quarrying operations conducted in Como County. And finally, while I feel certain my commentary will not be considered by TCEQ or perhaps the SOAH judge, I feel compelled to raise an issue that greatly disturbs me. I must say that I'm astounded that any quarry operator would attempt to seek permits for a limestone rock crushing quarry over the epicenter of the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone. I'd always thought that the TxDOT green road signage advising motorists of the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone was meant to advise people of an environmentally sensitive area such that due care would be taken not to cause any pollution in order to preserve the water quality that so many Texans depend on. I now wonder if a rock crushing quarry is allowed to conduct operations directly over the recharge zone, that these signs are meaningless, and perhaps the state should save money and remove these signs, as they would be meaningless to the public. The message would be clear that the state has abandoned all pretense that it's serious about preserving water quality and quantity, and that industry dictates water usage, not the state or legislatively authorized water boards and commissions. Thank you.
Your Honor, just for clarification, and I think you've already done this, just for the record, these studies and these sorts of things that are being talked about today, you already ruled that you're going to allow these folks to speak, which is okay. Can we just clarify that this is not considered evidence for the evidentiary portion?
We're not in the
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
We're not in the evidentiary.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Carol Glover. I'm also representing my husband, who could not be here, Bruce Glover. Our property is at 2230 Meritage. We have 2 acres in Vintage Oaks. It is 3.4 miles from the proposed Vulcan Quarry crusher. And most of the year, the prevailing winds will be directly over our property. We have a large outdoor living space where we are the caregivers for our grandchildren as well as my elderly mother. We spend time outside, gardening, exercising, and enjoying that beautiful back deck that we built. So we moved in January of 2017. We chose to retire there out of the city on the 2 acres for environmental considerations as well as the natural beauty of the hill country, the clear skies, and the air quality, we had hoped. My husband served in the Air Force for 31 years. He is now retired there. He has endured several deployments to combat areas of operation and austere locations. And as a result of that military service, he has multiple health concerns, including a history of asthma, respiratory concerns. He is rated by the VA as 90% disabled, and most of that involves respiratory issues. So we are lifelong non-smokers, and we are very concerned about the air quality. With respect to this, it would certainly exacerbate the pulmonary conditions that he has, and for all of us, of course. His profession demands regular public speaking and vocal music, and that is a double concern for us as well. He is a pastor in the area, and we are both musicians, so air quality is important to us. So, just in closing briefly, I want to say this is not just a not in my backyard kind of issue. We implore this body to exercise the moral courage in the face of a well-financed, out-of-state corporate concern to protect our existing neighborhoods, our state's public health, our air quality, and natural resources by denying this application of Vulcan. This is a legacy we leave for our children, not just ourselves. Thank you very much.
People in the middle?
My name is Laura Stonecipher. I'm representing Laura's Canine Solutions, my business, and applying for affected party status against the Vulcan Quarry. My business, Laura's Canine Solutions, is located at 305 Herbalin Road, New Braunfels, Texas. We are 3.4 miles from the proposed crusher site and 2.86 miles from the property line. Our job is to board and train dogs. Our specialty is helping dogs with behavioral problems. My business and staff are particularly vulnerable to the particulate matter for several reasons. Our facility is not enclosed. It will be impossible to keep the particulate matter from entering the building, potentially exposing us and the dogs to that matter for the duration of their stay. Having a clean environment is one of the first responsibilities of a kennel, and the proposed quarry will make this much more challenging. My staff and I will have a much more prolonged exposure because we work primarily outside. We are open 12 hours a day, 365 days a year. 3 of my staff has respiratory issues already. Many of our human clients are disabled and have respiratory problems as well. I'm sorry, I'm super ramped up. We have a staff of 10 people. All 10 of us are the primary or only financial support for our families. I myself am a single mother of 2. Sickness affects income in any business, but in a very physical job working with animals, sickness affects our safety in a more tangible way. We cannot be slow or weak working with these dogs, or we are at risk of being outmaneuvered. And sometimes that includes aggression. My business also has a unique vulnerability to Vulcan Quarry. As a canine behaviorist of 20 plus years, I'm very concerned that the vibrations from the blasting are very likely to be felt by the dogs. When they feel the concussive forces through the earth, it will increase stress, fear, and reactivity. This will increase aggression or the desire to escape, stress diarrhea, and susceptibility to viruses. Please consider the impact that it has on us, one dog fight, one lost dog, that has on our facility and our business, and the faith that the community puts in us when they trust us with their family. Our express purpose for being in our location is to provide a peaceful and healthy environment to board and train dogs that have behavioral problems. We are on 250 acres. We board up to 45 dogs every day. Many of these dogs come to us in a stressed state due to poor genetics, traumatic life experiences, etc. Our job is to build confidence, reliability in behaviors, and help the dogs overcome their issues. The express purpose of our location, which is locked into a long-term lease, is for a peaceful, safe, clean environment that aids in promoting the well-being of the dogs. The Vulcan Quarry location is a threat to this environment. I have here, if anyone wants to look at them, some scientific studies and reviews that show animals being used to predict earthquakes. And in 2 out of 3, it says that they can perceive the P waves that are pre-seismic earthquakes in excess of 10 kilometers. So in experiments where they're trying to prove this, they've actually used crushing rocks together as the stimuli. So anyway, I thank you for your time and your consideration.
My name is Mary Lee Freeman. My husband and I are senior citizens of Sensitive Group. We moved to Vintage Oaks 3 months ago, so we did not have a chance at the public comment period. The reason we moved from Dallas was the low air quality, which we thought would be better here in this county. I have asthma, and I expect that my retirement activities will be severely curtailed if I have to breathe silica dust, so we're requesting affected party status. 3.6 miles. Our address is 1238 Prairie Bend. And my husband is a veteran who's had Agent Orange exposure and severe problems with respiratory illnesses the last 2 years. Thank you.
My name is Chris Lupo. I am representing my wife, Altadis Lupo. That's L-U-P-O. Got an easy one. My address is 1179 Via Principal, or Principali, in Vintage Oaks. I am 2.7 miles from the crusher and 1.9 miles from the property line at 46 and 309. I was adversely excluded as an affected party due to failure to make comments on 22718. I was not in the area. I can provide our closing statements. We moved into the house on January 1st of this year. So we did not have an opportunity to make the comments when we, during that time. I personally have extremely bad allergies during the months of November through February, and according to the New Braunfels Municipal Airport, their windrow studies, that is exactly when the prevailing winds are going over my house from southwest to northeast, going over the quarry and blowing into Vintage Oaks. So during those times where it's the worst for me, that dust will be over my house. I usually have to get 1 to 2 steroid shots during that time. I get cedar flu. I'm a little susceptible to the mountain cedar because that's the season that it is as well. And I am requesting affected person status because of that. There's a couple of other things I'd just like to say that concern me. One is the lack of air quality monitoring. It's one thing for the applicant to say that they're going to abide by all the stipulations and permitting rules that they have. But when you don't have any air monitoring in the area, there's no open pit monitoring that they have there, there's no property line monitoring, they don't have to have it. The closest air quality monitoring that we have had in that area is Selma, and it was shut down 2 years ago. So there's no real-time air quality monitoring by the government at all to ensure that Vulcan is going to abide by any of the permitting that they have to. I would also like to say that my understanding is that the air modeling and air dispersion models that they used were from their 1604 plan. They have a big quarry over on 1604, it's been there for a long time. They have had 41 TCEQ permit violations there from air quality, stormwater, and hazardous materials. They've had 1 issue violation there for a wastewater spill that happened a while back. And they've had a SOAH violation for an expired sewage permit, and that's the quarry that they use to model our 3009 quarry that they want to put a crusher at. Like I said, since there's no local air quality monitoring, how do we know? How does anybody know? How can TCEQ enforce anything that they're doing out there with no quality monitoring whatsoever? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Let's take a really short break. I mean, I know we still have some more people that we're going to go over, but